Good morning, Singapore.
Good morning, Malaysia. How are you?
I am good.
Oh, there was a pause and a drag.
So the first thing is like I'm checking technically whether we've done so far, how well we've
Hmm.
done so far for me to say I'm good because technically if anything messes up, I know I have messed up. So that's why I was thinking, okay, are we all good? Because okay, it's appearing as June and all is well for now. So how are you, Sham? You've been dealing with a lot of stuff.
Yes, I have. But after the 2 years, 2.5 years doing stuff on platforms and offline, anything that can happen will happen, right? Technically. So she'll go with the flow, and we've got a cool guest who's dealt with even more, challenges and adversity. So I'm sure, we are good. We are good. So yes,
And
lots of
this
things happening. Yes, about to say
Now, I said
this.
this is why we need a partner,
Hmm. Correct.
right?
Own
To raise you
cheerleaders.
up, to raise you up when you're down, and when you go too high, to bring you back, to be grounded. Yeah, and you do that very well. All right, nice. We were catching up earlier with Naga, and I'm going to bring her in very, very quickly, right? Because we don't waste time. And one of the chats or questions that we were chatting about, we were talking about why we do this, right? Really, for me, is really the opportunity to be able to bring in leaders like Naga into this show, right? Yeah, because these are people who have years of mastery, who do their work quietly. They are the engine that keeps running until there's a breakdown. We don't look for them, but really, we need to hear from them as to how they think, what their true experiences are, because they are not the typical people who fall into the leadership pipeline, who are seen as leaders, right? But they are leading so quietly, engineering everything that's working well, right? And that's for me, I think that's the most exciting part for me, right? To hear from those whom we don't usually hear from. So with that, I think we're going to bring Naga. But before that, I should bring her in and then introduce, right? Can
Oh yeah. Okay. Okay. Okay.
okay,
Let's do something
because
different.
I also want to see her expression, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And also we're doing something different, right? Since you're doing the introductions this morning, you do it your way. You do the Malar way.
Yeah. Hi, Naga. So you have to just act as if like we are just meeting now, and I'm going to introduce you, right? So I think, let me see. I know Naga for almost 30 years. So I'm not going to read from the CV, but I'll tell you about the CV, which has been up there also. So I know Naga for 30 years. I met her first when I was working in Bank Negara. I was doing my studies part time. Hardly knew her, but I only knew that whenever she walked, I would just stare at her. It's like, wow, so much of confidence, right? And we were doing our studies, and we were doing a subject called company law. Too poor to do tuition, so anyone who teaches us, we take it up. And our dearest Naga actually offered to tutor us, complimentary. So her service orientation was there from those days, right? And we passed, right?
Hmm.
That was 30 years ago, and I think I've been really, really very privileged to have had her to bounce my thoughts and ideas. Where she's totally confident. It's an amazing combination when you have confidence and humility coming together,
Hmm.
right? Yeah.
Hmm.
Because I dare say this because I've seen her over the years in different aspect, personal. I've not seen her in professional except for Bang Nigara, right? But I got excited. I've always been excited. For me, every moment with Naga is an amazing moment for me because I have to figure out what she was trying to tell me for the next couple of months until I meet her again, right? And that's how deep she is. And of course, recently it was exciting, during the COVID that she retired, and she actually just finished her CLP. And there was an article in Millennial, and I realized that for some reason, even though I never knew that, she was raised in a rubber plantation. I know she has a big family, right? It just didn't register because you're just staying so focused, right? And, she had chosen to take on early retirement from the World Bank that she had served for 22 years. Now, prior to that, she was already with Bank Negara when I was there for 13 years. And then she went to the World Bank for 22 years, of which 17 years, she was the lead counsel. Now, in all my interactions with her, we hardly talk about work, which is why I needed to get to know her. All right. But what I do know is that one of my kids was asking, what does Auntie Naga do? And to summarize the little that I know, Kelentong my way, I said, she speaks to the leaders, leaders of nations, and tells them, advises them as to how they can make the nation better. So I am very privileged, very happy to be able to be with Naga today. And Naga, thank you for saying yes. Don't know whether the introduction was good enough, but I suppose we'll say it is good enough because you're so simple. So let's get on with the show, Naga. Welcome to our show.
Naga was called to the bar.
Right.
Okay, so ask the question. Hurry up. I know you question.
Good morning, Malar, Sham. Now, with that introduction, I'm very nervous now.
It's so cute to see Naga nervous.
Yeah, you did. You set it up, right? You set it up that way, right, Malar?
Well, I get to see the I don't want to say maybe the like Naga nervous, but again, this is the beauty about individuals like Naga who say what they feel and do what they say, right? And I think that's amazing. So it's good that you're feeling.
It's not helping at all. You're making me even more nervous, and the order has become taller now. Unexpected. Just kidding. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, so how do we not make her nervous? Okay, let's talk. Right. So
Yes.
it's important about. So Naga, tell us. I think we've put up the article. That's how I very quickly shared with Sham. I said we have to bring my friend over, right? And so, like, why would you do this?
As in,
As to you've had such a successful career, right? Okay, I would say it's a successful career. Not sure whether you'll see it as successful career, right? We've had such a like we are all looking at what work, right? And so you decide to retire to look after your mom, right? And then you decide to to be chambered, called to bar, and you want to now offer your services, and that's what we read in Malaysia. I mean, you've retired, so why do you still want to work? Why do you want to do this?
Oh, yeah, that's a very good question. Sometimes when I think about the prospect of what it entails to be fully immersed in pro bono work, I've seen my friends and those who work. They look tired because I think it's the passion, and you want to do something, and then once you get involved, there's no stopping. You do your best, and if that means you're going to work tirelessly or get completely immersed, we have very little choice. Now, the reason why is okay. Long ago, 55, 50 used to be, two-thirds of your life already. But now we all tend to live longer. And 60 is considered, or I retired at 58, is considered pretty young. Now, the retirement age of the World Bank is 67. So it was 9 years ahead of time, and perhaps that told me that I can still contribute and be productive in the professional arena, because we all are productive in our own way. At home, when you're looking after your parents or running a household. It's all part of being productive. Anything that you do that makes you happy at the end of the day and you sleep soundly, that is productive, I feel. So therefore, so when I look at it, the thing is, I have always been interested in pro bono work. Even when I was in the World Bank, I did volunteer. I did do, I was involved in not in a sort of the word NGO has been a construct of the last 20, 30 years. And we were talking about way earlier than that, in the 80s. The Women Aid Organization, then there was a charitable fund for the disabled, and Pure Mind, Pure Life Society, which catered for orphans. So I was continuously involved, and then I had also sort of volunteered at a program run by the Persatuan Peladang, to provide exposure to women leaders, and this is way back in the early 90s. So that has been a part of me. But when I went to the World Bank, it became a completely different paradigm, because the work entailed a lot of travel, a lot of preparation, and I was completely consumed. The World Bank job was like a very jealous mistress. It kept me to itself and the work, and therefore, so I felt that when I came home, now I can sort of continue with do much more. Now they have no distractions, so I can go and see what I can do to add value. And the NGO scenario and volunteerism in Malaysia has grown in leaps and bounds, and so I'm actually understanding the topography, trying to see where I best fit and where I can bring value. People are doing a great job, and I want to make sure that so to do to add value seriously. That's what I'm looking at, and that is the reason why I think I'll give it a shot and see how long I can work and contribute in this arena. That is the reason why I'm doing it, perhaps.
Nice.
On the chambering and being called to the bar, that was simply to bridge the gap. In the event the pro bono work requires attendance in court, I must not think I don't have the ability because I've not been called to the bar. And that is the reason I did the chambering and it was called to the bar.
Nice. Yeah, good call.
Nice one. So, your heart is very much at home in Malaysia, right? The fact, I mean, the pro bono work, we can see, at least I know that's been, and that's why, when I introduced you and I said, how you were always eager to help anyone around you. That's how I know you, right? And you've been that same person all along, right? And your heart has always been in Malaysia, the fact that you want to come and serve the nation again. So I'm very grateful, we have citizens like you. So why did you join the
Well, I've had offers prior to that when I was engaged very heavily in the WTO work in the early days. That's the 1992s, the 93s. There was also a request that I joined the WTO after the GATS agreement was signed, and but I didn't connect with that institution as much as later when I saw the World Bank. Okay, I was with the Bank Negara I was a bank scholar twice over, and I had 12-year bond. I completed it, and I gave another 1 year to see where and how do I go henceforth. And also 12 years, 13 years is a long time to be in an institution, and I had lived through the most intense, I would say, financial sector development phases of Malaysia. I don't know how many of you all will recall the cooperative crisis, the banking crisis, the new law, BAFIA, introduction of electronic payment, the restructuring of BNM, and many things happened. And then I looked at it and I said, I need to do something bigger or more. And then I also thought, okay, but perhaps I should just take time off, go right, because central banks were evolving around the world, and I thought, okay, I have gone through this experience. Perhaps it's good to write. So I got a place in the New York University, which is a central banking center, to do my PhD, which will allow me to write. And I was literally ready, and I got a call from the World Bank because I had met some of the people at the IMF and World Bank in an earlier interaction. And they asked whether I would be interested to join them. And I thought, oh my God, never thought about it. But anyway, and then I went over to talk to them. And I said, this is where I want to work. Because the World Bank's mission was eradication of poverty and playing a key role in the development of a nation. I mean, that sort of blows you away, right? So I still, and another particular thing that happened to me is when I went for meeting up with some of these managers, I still remember how I was moved when I saw this sculpture in the lobby of the World Bank. It is the H, it's not the front that you see now, it is the other side of the lobby. And, the sculpture depicts an elderly man being led with a stick by a younger boy. And the sculpture was a tribute to river blindness. And that moved me. And if this institution does this, I knew I will be happy in that institution. So that's the reason. I think I had come to a saturation point and needed. And Bengagara was, when I joined, with public service. And then when I looked at the World Bank, it looked like a larger public service, so to speak, serving nations. And when I started work, and I also felt that it was good for a person from developing country to be part of an institution like that, because you can bring in developing country perspective, issues, problems, and problem-solving methods to the solutions proffered by the bank. In fact, that was actually the reason I wanted to be a voice of the developing country by joining an institution like this.
Malar, I'm going to jump in with a question because I see something that I want to talk about. Right? You said two things that I want to draw early on that I want to draw on. One was when you start, there's no stopping, right? And the second thing you said was after 13 years is a long time being in an institution, right? Or being with an organization. Yet you were with the World Bank for more than 20 years. So help me reconcile.
I asked myself that, all right? And I go 13 years. I guess it's because the arena is bigger. See, in Bangalore, it is one nation. Whereas the World Bank, I worked in all the regions, and I worked in many countries. Literally pulled up the sleeve and worked in like 60 countries. I was involved indirectly or directly in another 20. So the playing field became bigger, and therefore 22 years did not seem to be long enough, actually. In fact, I still remember, even after 22 years, I was still very excited about my work, and I was looking forward to it. And it was, time flies. So it's a very different, I guess it's the playing field. It's just, you have a larger playbook, so to speak. And then the other one you mentioned about how you get sucked into it. And you see, remember, I told you I get sucked into it, and that's it. So the jelly mistress kept me. excited till the very last moment when I decided to leave. Even now, I'm excited about what the bank does. Yeah, it was.
I can see that.
How I, even when I left the bank, Bank Nagara, you have this affiliation. Bank Nagara was my first love, so to speak. And then you go to the World Bank, and it's like a marriage.
Yeah, nice metaphor. Malar, you want to take the next question?
First love and marriage.
First love and marriage, yeah.
Yeah. And so, what gave you the courage to say? Because I know that the work is, when you're immersed, you're so passionate about something, right? It's not easy to cut away. I mean, I get that. But how did you manage to say, okay, this is enough, or I'm done and I'm moving on? How's the transition for you?
It's a tough one, no? Basically, because it's easier to walk away from a job that you don't like when there are a lot of push and pull factors. But I think in my case, it was purely pull factors in the sense because it was a combination of a number of things. First of all, I did not enjoy the flexibility that I was accorded earlier. I had moved to Bangkok to be closer to home, and I spent a lot of time flying back and forth, but and spending weekends here, and and sometimes I get to spend even more than weekends here and fly to the next destination for work. That was the flexibility that I had gotten when my mother had fallen down and broken her arm. Then what happened is, but early 2020, my posting to Bangkok was coming to an end, and I was given to understand that I have to either go back to DC or I have to go to Hanoi. Initially, I thought Hanoi is not too bad. I can still try to swing it, but then but then at that point in time, my mom lost a sibling. My mom, that was only surviving sibling, her sister. She passed away with cancer, and the initial stages of lockdown was starting, and we couldn't attend the funeral because her family was large, 20 people for the funeral, and I could see how visibly my mother was moved, was very depressed. So that, and I thought, oh my God, I need to be around with her. And then the second thing is, then I looked at my sister who was looking after her, and then I realized, because the 2 months that I stayed without traveling made me realize what it entails to look after a 91-year-old person. And I felt bad that I didn't quite understand the magnitude of responsibility. And then the third factor was a friend of mine lost her husband, and he just died of heart attack. And they had a lot of plans to travel together when she retired. And so you see, it's a combination of four factors. And I looked at it and I said, okay. I don't know how many of it is push factor or pull factor, but bottom line was I decided, okay, great, just let's stop working, be at home, take care of things in the home front, and see what to do next. And just like that, I decided I will do it. And of course, one will ask, what do you do about your financial side of it? I think for the past 5-6 years, I've been always thinking that one should be able to walk away from a job and must not be held up by the job after 50, so to speak, by the fact that you need the money. So I have always, I had, tried my best to be financially independent to some extent, and that made that decision even more, made it easier to leave. So those are some of the factors that led me to give up something I enjoyed a lot.
Nice, nice.
Malar, I'm going to ask a question. And Naga, it's going to sound brash, hard, judgmental. I'm asking it only because I think some people might be thinking about it. So I would like to get your version of it, right? The question is this: I mean, you were in. So you know the concept of the good for the masses is more important than the good for the individual, right? So if you have to sacrifice, it's the individual that you sacrifice and the mass. And you were doing work at a global level. You were impacting countries that need be elevated out of poverty. There's lots of effects of what the World Bank does, right? And you've given up that for you and your family, right? So if someone who's listening might say, and I'm just doing the real extreme here, that's very selfish of you, right? Or that's very that's so, for someone who's set in the World Bank, this is a very small, not a small, but isn't this you're wasted, your talent is wasted, if that's a way of saying it, right? Now, if someone were to ask you that, how would you respond? You're doing so much good in the World Bank, your impact was immense, and your talent's wasted.
You're not the first person to actually raise this point. Actually, I was asked. Actually, they didn't ask me directly, but they asked this same question through my sister who lives in the US. And seriously, you can get somebody to look after your mom. And after all, you have other siblings, and you did it in your past. I guess, okay, that's a very valid question. In fact, it's not even judgmental. It's something that's very, it's normal to ask that. Okay, the fact remains that I had contributed more than 36 years of my life to quote unquote public service. And there is also this fact where when you look at it and you go like how I left Bank Negara is 13 years. I've contributed to my country. Now I can move on to contribute to a larger, bigger world or another cause. Similarly, when in 2020, when I look at it, it was the same sort of feeling. Okay, that phase is over, and now someone else needs your contribution more than the bank. And the most important thing to remember is none of us are indispensable in an institution. Another person can walk in. They're not Naga, but they will be able to carry on the work. That's why that institution exists and continues to exist today from its inception. People come and go, but Naga is the only. My mother. I am the only Naga to my mother. I am the only Naga to my sister, and and also there was this important timing. Timing is very critical in decisions we make. I did not want to come home when my mother could not recognize me anymore. She was already 91. Can you imagine if I stayed on for another 3-4 years? Probably she'll say, "Who are you? Oh, nice to meet you. But who are you?" I think it'll break my heart. And so there is a time when our priorities shift, and we have to listen to our heart. And basically, so the simple answer is I listened to my heart and did that.
Thank you. Malar, you give the easy one.
It is so Naga.
Yeah.
Whoa, that was big. Thanks, Naga. I think you've just taken us really given us, I would say, even though it's a glimpse, it shows how you think, what you feel, and your values, and how you check into to bring yourself together at any given point of time. So I want to thank you for that. Now, in your in your experience, or I have to read this to you because Associate Professor Dr. Chitralada Ramalingam, I'm not sure whether you know her. You know her. So she's saying it's inspiring to bravely give up for your mother. After all, in Hinduism, it's Mada, Pita, Guru, Devam. All of us will only have one mother on this earth. Kudos. Thank you, Chitra. Right. So just saying that. And there are a lot of quiet listeners on LinkedIn. For some reason, they're not asking questions. They're probably listening deeply, right? So when you say this, so I think one of those things that I was very attracted, and I wanted to know is that you met all leaders. You sat with them. Um, tell us a little bit about when you met these world leaders, and you were there representing World Bank to give them some counsel as to how they can probably either eradicate poverty or develop the nation, right? What type of leaders did you meet? How would you categorize them, right? This is the month of June, and we're looking at leadership, and we've been interviewing fathers, right? And fathers of families, communities, corporate companies, right? And it's really interesting because you were talking to those fathers, right, of nations. And so it'd be interesting to know how in your 22 years of service, you would have had some form of categorizing them. So tell us, how do you categorize them? And maybe we'll listen to how you think about it.
Okay, let me sort of put what I'm going to say in the context.
Yeah.
So now, depending on the size of the nation, the level of the leaders we meet varies in the World Bank. So in a country like a smaller country and a fragile country, the leadership level will be, sometimes you even get greeted by the prime minister sometimes, or the ministers. But largely your interaction is with the minister of finance and the ministry's top officials, the central bank governors, deputy governors, and their officials. This is so we meet different layers of leaders, and of course we also get to meet some people who move the nation. Um, uh, in Myanmar, the gentleman who led the movement. It's unfortunate now, but then for democracy to be installed, so it's a mixed sort of levels of leadership. So just to clarify that. Now, coming back to the categorization, I know it is terrible to pigeonhole people, but for practical purposes, and let's be frank, we all tend to. I think it's more for us to be able to relate to them better. So we will have a mental box for people, and the importance is, of course, not to be biased and to allow that box to be fluid. So I will start with that caveat. Now, the work at the bank consisted of my role largely was basically being part of a team, make an assessment of the financial sector. We are invited to go and make an assessment, look, and they will say, tell us how to make our financial sector more dynamic, safe, and sound. And then you look at the aspiration of the country, the plans, and then with the assessment and stakeholder discussions, everything at the end of the day, sometimes it takes about 2 years, you come up with practical and implementable recommendations, and then you design a project and design the financing, and then you'll go on to implement a project. I mean, literally, this is the life cycle of the engagement, in different, maybe shorter period or longer period in a different area, could be education or health. And typically the engagement takes about 5 to 6 years. That's how long interact with the leaders at the various levels, and therefore what we do is we want to make a change. They want to reform, and the result of a reform is change. So it's basically a change management that you are trying to induce. And therefore, I see the leaders as champions. Now, I mean, you guys are the gurus. Much has been written about leadership styles, the democratic ones, autocratic, the laissez-faire type, strategic, what transformational, transactional, and then even bureaucratic leaders, right? To name a few different styles, 5 styles, 4 styles, and 7 styles. For me, I would put them into 4 categories. Remember, in the context that I was working, one is the unreliable champion. Second is a weak champion. Then you have the willing champion and a real champion. I gave it a thought, and I went back to 22 years and tried to sort of summarize their behaviors. It is very, very broad spectrum, right? What do I mean by the unreliable champion? They say the right thing, but they don't really understand or care for the issues of policy. They have no moral conviction for the reform. They follow trends. They'll play along as long as there's nothing controversial or difficult. Now, as long as the project or the reform doesn't upset their political masters or their own position, they will go along. But then people like this can't last. The project will stall and be cancelled, because invariably you'll come to a lot of issues in implementation. And then another trait of them is that they will blame the failure of the project on other people, and they will make sure that they secure their position. So I call them the unreliable champion, though they claim they're a champion. Then you have the weak champion. This person knows what's right, cares for the cause, knows that the reform will benefit the country, but they're afraid to ruffle any feathers. But they will be willing to try. Now, and this leader will postpone. The way they cope is they will postpone decisions. They will take time to make decisions, and then sometimes they take so much time that events will overtake the reform. And then they sometimes stop on track because it doesn't resonate well with their political leaders, or the opposition is strong. They can't move past the barricade, and they will not take on battles for the cause. And essentially, they will become bureaucratic, succumb to fear, and go into a paralysis. I've seen such champions. I mean, the word champion in quote unquote. Then you have the willing. Then you have the willing.
Your categorizations and your terms. Very nice. Okay, the willing champion.
The willing champion. The willing champion knows what is right, cares for the cause, knows that the reform will benefit the country. They're convinced that the reform is right and necessary, recognizes the parameters of their power, and is willing to push the envelope to the extent that the endeavor can succeed. Unfortunately, they do not have the tools or maturity to navigate stormy paths and uncharted territories. So they may not be as effective as they would want to be. Now, then you have the fourth, the real champion, so to speak. Now, this leader is whom we all love. Actively seeks to make a difference. They work in a team. And the person and the team go beyond self-interest to identify new changes. They create a vision to guide the change. They use their influence, personal or otherwise. They use their influence and their station and their position to influence, inspire, persuade, and execute change. They are strategists who build a network, and they know how to pick battles. And they're willing and they're flexible enough to adjust the implementation without affecting the outcome. So they find solutions for making it happen, and negotiate how the implementation can be done in a way that we still reach the outcome. They find solution, remove hurdles, and they're willing to give you a good fight to keep on course. I mean, this is so ideal, but I have seen such champions too. Now, one added point about is that people's now, if you look at it, 1, 2, 3, and 4, what it is the strength of character that makes the difference. Then the second thing is the moral conviction in what you want to do. And this makes the difference between these 4 categories. And then when you look at it, people's temperament change. And I've seen a lot of shifts between 1 and 2, and a lot of shifts between 3 and 4. So the duration, because you have about 5 to 6 years in the engagement, you can actually see that shifts moving around. So when they're shifting, that's when you go in and try to hold them in position, and that's a tough job. And then you try to regale. Remember, you were the real champion. Indirectly, I didn't have the categories then, but what I'm saying is, you try to imbue and tell them, look, this is what we wanted to set out. We set out to do this, and well, let's address this. And then you sort of invoke all these strengths and try to keep them within that parameter of a real champion or a willing champion, and don't let that shift go into 1 or 2, because 1 or 2, once they get there, then you have a close shot, so to speak. And so in the event like a willing champion becomes a weak champion, remember the second category of not a clever leader. We sometimes have to wait for that person to be shipped out, or we end up restructuring the project to meet the reality on the ground. Because without a good champion, forget about reforms. It's difficult. And you need time to identify another leader to get the cause moving. And in some cases, willing champions become effective champions, and that's the bonus, of course.
Yeah. It's keeping the big picture, the goal, and the objective in mind, right? Yeah, and steering the leader that you have path, or maybe even sometimes at the expense of goals, that you're not going to achieve 100% if 100% was what you're looking at initially, the initial. Crafting it to an 80% because, or even a 70%, because even that is better than where we are right now. Yeah. I love the 4 categories and the way you explained it. Okay. And I think it fits the scenario.
It may not fit the management books theories, but it's purely my personal engagement with these people, and finally when you sit and go through some of these projects and recount and think about and the duration is longer, and we go back to the country like 4 times in some countries, and you're continuously engaged, and you're online, you're working with them continuously for 5 to 6 years. So that perhaps allowed me to sort of
get to know them.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've got a question for you. 2 extremes. I thought your categorization was brilliant, because I think not only you categorize, you could help us see when we work in the corporate sector, when we meet leaders who are actually implementing smaller change, right? How they fall into these categories as well, right? But you've also, for me, anchored it or sealed it with, the major difference is actually the strength and character and their moral conviction. And more importantly, I think you also keep us in the loop of hope that people change. People can go from one space to another space. And as people who want to, who are interested in the mission, you need to keep track. You need to observe people to say that change is possible, And that's important, because when I know you are ready, I know we're going to be successful together. But when I know you're not ready, because we're not going to be successful, maybe this is not the space I want to put my energy in. I think these are really, really very clear indications, right? So, but I'm very curious, because lately we've been reading a lot about how incompetent leaders get promoted in the corporate sector, right? By position, by political connection, because and it happens, right? So they may not know what they are talking about, right? So where do you see in these categories that you're talking about, right? How does competence impact their effectiveness, being in whichever category, whether it's unreliable, weak, willing, or champions? What have you seen?
I think a few things. While I sort of described this, I think competency, integrity, willingness to work hard. These three are, and the ability to communicate. You can have a very good leader and a lousy communicator, and it destroys the working environment, destroys the team. People leave the team, and then, but the foundation for any, and this should be non-negotiable with any leader. As I said, competency. A competent person not should shy away from. I know we tend to be moved by the promises of promotion, but one should always ask, "Am I competent?" And then and even before that competency is this issue of integrity. When somebody has integrity, then you actually ask yourselves, and
Right.
you are your own check. So integrity, competency, and then, as I said, you can have integrity, competency, and you can be the cleverest person, but if you're not willing to work hard, if you're lazy, you can't get anywhere. And sometimes you see this very clever person being utterly lazy. And I equate laziness not to that lazy, but it is actually a manifestation of irresponsibility.
Mm. Mm.
If you're responsible, you will not be lazy. And if you have integrity, you will be committed.
Mm.
And if
Okay.
you have competency, you'll be able to manage better.
Mm.
So these three fundamental qualities are essential. I'm sure they have a lot of what you call the tests they do to find out your temperaments, and the Kyrie temperament test and a few other ways. A lot of hiring is now done by sort of psychoanalysis and all that. But I don't know, how do you do psychoanalysis to find out whether a person has competency? Is something that can be measured, but
Yes.
integrity, hard work, I
And
think, maybe experience. Yeah.
Nice,
Commitment.
nice,
Yeah. Yeah.
nice. Sham, I know it's you have questions, but I have really one last
no,
question before I pass to you.
yeah, because we are at
Yeah,
49.
yeah, I know. Because you see, Naga, you're telling us a lot of beautiful stuff. In fact, I think this could be a podcast on its own on leadership. That's how much of essence of leadership that you've actually given us. I want to thank you, because our time is running out, right? I'm trying to connect this to the corporate world, right? Because we are talking about leadership insights. How in nation building you're able to see this, and you say you work with leaders medium term, 5 years, and you're working with them regularly. So there's a lot of interaction for you to observe firsthand and make the judgment call, when to persevere, when to not, where to put your energy. So your advice is very validated. So in the corporate world, what we see is happening is leaders come and go in 2 years. They are expected to bring out magic in 2 years. And they need to put out a magic team in 2 years. Perhaps not with all the resources. So in the 2 years, you are so much on the go. I'm not sure in reality how much how much of space, forget about competency to observe and do all the things you're doing, right? When this fast track, even for the people who are working, the leaders who are working for leaders, right? They're young people who may not have the life experience to be able to observe all of this. They're probably using some template that they've learned from a leadership school to say this is what works, right? And so, if if you would like to leave us an advice or your thoughts, right? Because in the advice that you've given in the nation building, it actually somehow or other affects the smaller corporations, the organizations, because that's where we're getting our directions from, right? How do you see us going for this quick fixes, quick wins, getting leaders who promises us a lot of things and they deliver by hook or by crook, without sacrificing a lot of things, right? How do you see short-term leadership choices on leaders and decision making that we're making impacting us as a nation?
Right.
Long question.
No, but a very valid point, because I think the outcome of things. They say time is a great master. It's so time makes a difference to outcomes. And then you're talking about in the corporate world, you're hired as a new CEO and you're given 2 years to prove yourself. Now, how do you sort of size this person up and decide whether you want to hire them or not, or what kind of leader this person is going to be? But as I said, at that point in time, when the new intakes come, then you have to remember that people change, people can be groomed, people can be taught, and you have to grow them. So if you're asking about the new intake, people with very shorter CVs, so to speak, and longer CVs, right? Just to quicken the conversation. And people shorter CVs, basically you need to rely more on competency and the ability to communicate, so to speak. And so that's why we look at shorter CVs, see where they did, what they have been doing, during their free time, or did they do anything more than just study. We do that stuff. But when it comes to the mid-career, or you're hiring a CEO, again, at that point in time, you already have a past. And the past can be a very good judge of this person, but does not necessarily define the person. Let's be clear about it. It's an indication of what this person is capable of and can achieve or will do. And then you can go ahead and base it on their past experience. So competency comes out very clearly, easily, and you have to be very specific on a project and go into details. So the interviewers must actually go through and check up on that person, and then and ask very serious questions about one of the engagement where they did very well and one that they failed, to understand beyond the CV of that person, and what challenges, how they meet those challenges, how they react in those circumstances. So it's an interviewing technique that I'm talking about, which we used to employ in the bank when we hired people. It's very critical because the sum total of the past defines a lot of people, and they are a product of also the past and the current. But we must remember the future environment can shift and change with the person. So it is that's what you look at. So integrity, hard work, and competency, to name a few, and communication ability. If you look at it, it is pretty. You take on that and then say, okay, this guy. And some people take forever to build trust, and that is, again, if you're in a past track, you can't do that. And some people, because they're true to themselves, they have moral conviction, they carry these qualities in them, people tend to trust them. And then you look for consistency in the behavior. It is, I don't mind somebody who has been consistently but slowly go up in the output
Mm.
compared to
Mm.
somebody who's up there on yo-yos again.
Nice.
Yes,
Nice.
yes, that's a nice metaphor, and also a nice analogy and visual example of what you have just shared with us over the last 56 minutes. Thank you, Naga, for being with us. I love the way that you brought in character as being a critical aspect of a leader. And for me, that is important because I think character is one thing that we don't speak about um, often enough, or we don't speak about candidly enough. And bringing that out in relation to integrity, competency, working hard, and communications. I think that put it very nicely in a nutshell as to what made for us a successful leader in the projects that you manage. Thank you for being with us this Thursday morning and spending not just your time, but your wisdom with us. And Malar, do you have anything to say to Naga?
No, I think there's enough to even write a leadership book, Naga. I know you.
Yes.
Yeah, there's enough to dig deeper to write a leadership book, and I just love how Naga actually helped us transition from nation building to
Hmm.
right up to the personhood, the character of the leader that contributes to the nation, right? And what I also love towards the end, which we probably need to chew it a little bit more, is that how do we now, in our short-term choices and decision making in the corporate world, bring this and make the right judgment when we're bringing in leaders in the short run, right? To make the same or similar impact, to make success, because we all contribute to the mission. So with that, Naga, thank you very, very much. I always say this, don't quite care about what everybody else thinks, but I think this was worth every second that you invested with this. So thank you very much. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we say goodbye to you?
No, thank you for giving me this opportunity, and it's a very your questions were very incisive and very thought provoking, and I hope my experience and this sharing helps. I would end with one point about the the leaders keep claiming that they are doing the right thing for people, and even in the corporate sector, in a nation, in every situation, it can be the father even in a family will say, I'm doing the right thing for you, and I'm doing for all of your benefits. And then the question is always, is like, does the person really ask themselves, am I doing the right thing? How do I know I'm doing the right thing? Then the question is, I mean, that a leader is confronted with this question, the ethical ones though, and even people, when we look at our leaders, this is the question we ask. And I think there are three behaviors one can sort of assess the situation and the leader by. Very simple tool, even the Harvard Business Review sort of comes to a conclusion that you can actually measure it in that sense. One is how does what kind of positive relationship does the leader create? That is a clear indication of the kind of person he is. Then the second one is, does the leader demonstrate expertise and judgment? Because that will again give us a clear idea as to whether the leader is on the right path when he says he's right. And then the last part is whether they're consistent. Remember the yo-yo thing I mentioned, and whether they will do what they say they will do, whether they walk the talk. Now, if a leader does not demonstrate, these three qualities, then we can safely say that the leader is doing the right thing not for others, but for himself. So, I will end with that because we are confronted with people who take who take on leadership positions every day in every situation, or when there's a crisis or a panic situation. And then after a while, you wonder who's a real leader. If you see Money Heist, and that's a very interesting a series, the Spanish series, and you will see how the leadership is very fluid there. Just a thought. I'm a movie buff, but thank you, ladies. Thank you very, very much, Malar. Thanks, Sham, for this
Most
opportunity,
welcome.
and yeah, good
Thank
luck.
you.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you for
right.
saying
And
yes.
yes, yes.
And I think that's a great note for us to end this show for this week. Malar, what do you think?
Yes. So I'm just going to say bye to Naga before you say goodbye. Thanks, Naga. See you soon. I'm just going to get you off the screen so that we can say our goodbyes. Yes, Sham.
Yo.
We went beyond time, but it was worth it.
Yes.
So we're going to say thank you. Connect with us, YouTube, Spotify, listen to Naga while I am going to scramble through my summary today because there was just too many good things that she gave us. So with that, Sham, thank you for those who stayed on. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Have a brilliant weekend ahead. Till we meet you next week with another exciting guest, right? All right.
Yes, we will.
Okay, bye, Sham.
Bye. Bye-bye, Malar. See you,
Bye.
everyone.
See you.
Bye.